Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main tactical theme in Arsenal's convincing 5-0 win over Wolves. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on Arsenal's attacking shape, and then we'll look on how Thomas Partey and Jorginho were able to impact the game and how they played a key role in Arsenal's 3 goals that killed it off in the opening half hour. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have both sides playing in a 4-3-3, and given the fact that Arsenal killed off this game in the opening half hour, we're going to focus on why it was so easy for them to get behind this Wolves side. What you end up seeing is that Wolves do drop off into a 4-5-1 out of possession, and from there it is 3v3 in that midfield zone, so you'd assume that they would be comfortable in that area. But you always have to focus on Gabriel Jesus, who does drop off deeper and would have to pull out one of the center backs. And if the center backs didn't follow him, they could have Lamina sticking towards him, and then hope that Raul Jimenez could sit on Jorginho to ensure that he couldn't get on the ball comfortably. And then you'd have to focus on Trossard, who also is capable of drifting laterally and pulling away Semedo, or even drifting in towards that central area to occupy a center back or force one of the midfielders, specifically Lamina, to pick him up. However, what we're going to focus on here is the fullbacks, because you have a center back playing at left back and then Thomas Partey operating as the right back for the second consecutive week. In many cases, that would see Arsenal playing in more of a 4-1-5 with Trossard and Saka providing the width and Xhaka and Odegaard pushing forward in towards the final third. And from there, you'd assume that you wouldn't see many overlapping or underlapping runs from the fullbacks, and largely Arsenal will be looking to get Trossard and Saka into 1v1 situations. Trossard isn't like Gabriel Martinelli, who can offer a direct threat with his pace, although he can operate in that wide area. So that would leave Saka with the main task of getting the ball in that zone and targeting Hugo Bueno to get in behind him or get the ball on towards his left foot to serve as a shooting option. We did see that throughout this game, but it wasn't from a 4-1-5. What we ended up witnessing was that Arsenal did still shift into a 3-2-5 with Thomas Partey shifting in towards that midfield zone, and then you would see Ben White operate as the right center back. So basically, rather than having Zinchenko or Tierney shift in towards that midfield zone, now Arsenal were operating in that 3-2-5 with the right back tucking in towards the midfield zone to overload that area and help free up space for the deepest lying midfielder. Here, what we ended up seeing was that Jorginho and Thomas Partey were overloading that central area, so they were able to get on the ball and help Arsenal bypass the first phase of a Wolves press. And that played a key role, because now what ended up happening was that when Thomas Partey and Jorginho would get on that ball, Raul Jimenez couldn't pick up both of them, and it would leave one of the Arsenal midfielders with the time and space to play the ball around Twang and João Gomez to get Saka into 1v1 situations against Hugo Bueno. We can say that Saka and Gabriel Jesus did swap positions throughout that game. Practically the front three did during specific phases of that opening half. And in the build-up to the opening 2 Arsenal goals, it was Gabriel Jesus and then Saka getting the better of Hugo Bueno in 1v1 situations to help create Xhaka's opening goals. This ultimately highlighted a systemic issue that Wolves encountered against this Arsenal 3-2-5, and it was simply down to the fact that they were able to use Thomas Partey or Jorginho to get on the ball freely, play the ball around Twang and João Gomez for the wide player on the right side, and then there would be no cover for Hugo Bueno, who struggled in 1v1 situations, combined with the fact that neither João Gomez or Matheus Nunes did a very good job of tracking the movement of Odegaard and Xhaka in the final third and breaking in towards the Wolves penalty area. In the build-up to Arsenal's second goal, you could see them creating a 4v2 with Hwang looking to step near Thomas Partey, who dropped in towards the back line, but he's also ahead of White, and no one's picking up Jorginho as Raul Jimenez isn't doing a good job of blocking off the passing lane in towards him. From there, Thomas Partey is able to play the ball into Jorginho, and from there, Jorginho is allowed to turn freely and locate the gap between Hwang and Matheus Nunes, who's near Lamina, tracking the movement of Gabriel Jesus, and he's able to split the 2 Wolves players to play the ball in towards Saka to run at Hugo Bueno. As that play develops, it's Saka running at the fullback, Matheus Nunes dropping in to provide cover, and focus on Xhaka, who's making a run towards the penalty area. As Saka runs at the fullback, Matheus Nunes doesn't look to shift over to make it a 1v2, and that allows Saka to cut onto his left foot across the fullback, and now you could see Odegaard looking to make a run off Lamina and into the space behind Nunes, who doesn't step forward to attack Saka. That allows Saka to either drive forward or play the ball across Matheus Nunes for Odegaard. And from there, you can now see Xhaka making a free run towards the penalty area off João Gomes. You see Saka playing the ball across Matheus Nunes. Odegaard back heels it in towards his path, but it's unsuccessful. And that results in the center back directing the ball into the path of Xhaka, running off João Gomes. And from here, he's able to fire a first-time effort beyond the keeper. Evidently, there were clear counters for Wolves to combat this by simply having the wide player tucking in towards Thomas Partey, or even if they wanted one of the shuttlers to push forward, then they could have Lamina pick up the spare Arsenal player and have one of the center backs track the movement of Gabriel Jesus. However, Wolves' alternative here was to shift to a 3-4-3 with Lamina dropping in between the center backs, but minutes later, Arsenal were still capable of exploiting that threat out in that wide area. They were still capable of getting the ball to Odegaard away from the shuttler. Saka was able to get the ball freely, and he manipulated the 1v2 in that situation with Hwang dropping off deeper, because now with Wolves in a 5-4-1, they could have the wider player dropping off to provide more protection in that zone. But rather than shutting down Saka in that 1v2, he could simply drop the ball back towards Thomas Partey, who is a capable passer, and from there he would receive the ball in the final third, where he could serve as a legitimate scoring threat or a creator in and around the penalty area. And as we watch that attacking move develop for Arsenal's third goal, it's Thomas Partey with the freedom to slide the ball across a late marker into the path of Trossard, who plays a first-time ball into the path of Odegaard. And from there, Odegaard receives the ball, and you could see that Saka's free in right half space. Odegaard does a very good job of retaining possession, and he ends up looking to drop it off into the path of Trossard, dragging two markers towards him, and that allows Trossard to split the two Wolves players for an unmarked Saka who wasn't picked up. And by the time the center back recovers, Saka is able to push the ball on towards his left foot and curl a superb effort beyond the keeper. And then even when you break down the fourth goal, you witness Jorginho receiving the ball freely in the second half, Thomas Partey being picked up by a shuttler, and it was Jorginho clipping a ball over the center back and Semedo to play Trossard free. And from there, he was able to get into a 1v1 against Semedo and then create a legitimate goal scoring opportunity for Gabriel Jesus. So as you can see, this was a relatively comfortable win in Xhaka's final game as an Arsenal player, built around Wolves' poor defensive approach, individual defensive lapses, and Mikel Arteta's side targeting the fullbacks.